What's up, man? Good to see you, dude. We were just talking before this, and I was like, man, this should be on the podcast. Such a good conversation, but we'll talk a little bit about it. But we do have a direction we're going. But it was so good to. I mean, it was good to see you at the funeral the other day. I know that funeral it sucks when you don't see someone for years, and then it's at a funeral. Right?
I think it's a strange thing to say. It was good to see you at the funeral.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those when you have a friend group where one person in the center is the one that kind of connects everybody,
Yeah.
and then that person leaves, for whatever reason. It's a monumental effort to try and reconnect, and then with distance and all that is one of those. I think we had attempted to try and do something like this a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it just never worked out. And that was like the last time we talked.
It was just like I felt so bad. I'm like, well, then I had all my heart issues and everything.
100%.
But, yeah. What were you saying, Liam? Is that pink button on the upper right still on? Push that button, the one with the pages on it. Okay. So now put it on. There we go. Got to have the logo on there. Oh, that logo actually looks better on the TV than it does on the computer. I was a little worried about that.
Oh.
Awesome. Yeah, so Chris, I mean, like, you're exactly right. Like, he moved away and we just kind of lost contact. And I think I saw Daniel maybe once since then. I've been kind of jealous of his life, just like going all over the place, like making all this.
Well, I think it's one of those things that people like know theoretically as you get older and as you become adults, like as if we weren't adults already when we met.
Yeah.
But it's like life is just life.
Yeah.
And you're down here. I'm over like the Glendora up there at the top of the 210, 57, and then Daniel's over in Big Bear. It's like those are two wildly different areas. And his job is always taking him places. My job is all over the place within an area. And then you're down here working on your stuff, all your house stuff. So it's like, yeah, it happens.
Well, that makes me remember, too, that's part of it wasn't just Chris keeping us together, but we all kind of lived in the same area at the time. Or at least close enough.
Right.
Because you've moved since then, right? You were a lot closer to Corona when Chris was around.
Well, I mean, I was sleeping in his garage, so there.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's right. I forgot about that.
There was that time in my life,
Yeah.
but also, and then when I moved up that way, and then ended up moving to Pasadena, which is even further. 100%. It was one of those where even if there was still distance, it didn't feel as far because we were more consistently having conversation more consistently, trying to figure out when we could hang out. I was actually reminded when Chris came back for the funeral. About that time, we all drove in the van to downtown Disney to buy buy a soda at that bar that was in downtown, and then we had that one drink and then drove back. Do you remember?
Was I with you guys? I don't know if I.
Yes, you were.
I don't remember that, or maybe I vaguely remember.
We were hanging out, and there was I think Lynn and the kids were gone. Karen and the kids were gone. It was like, hey, we just want to hang out, do something.
Oh, I think I do.
Why don't we just go to Disney? And it was like, what do you mean? It's like 6 o'clock in the evening. Disney is like, the day's over. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we'll just go take the 91 all the way over, park downtown Disney. I don't know. Tickets are expensive. Why don't we just hang out and get a drink or something? Had a drink. Man, these drinks are expensive. We should go.
I do remember that. Yeah. And wasn't it like super crowded too?
Oh,
so we
it
were
was.
just like,
It was. Yeah, it was like a Friday night. It was like, out of all the choices to make,
yeah,
that was all the wrong ones.
yeah. We did that a few times, I think, when Chris was around.
Oh goodness.
So Chris, it's all your fault.
How dare you?
You know what's funny is like he's talking about possibly moving back, and I'm like, by the time you get back, I'm probably going to be out of here. So,
Where are you? Are you guys planning on playing with the idea of moving?
I've wanted to for so long, and Lena's starting to come around. So probably be another couple of years because the kids will finish out youth group and all that kind of stuff. But and we don't even know where.
Okay.
Yet exactly. So.
I don't know if you were those people who are like, we're going to Tennessee, we're going to Texas, we're going, wherever those high points are already established. I didn't know if you guys were following suit there.
No, not. I mean, Texas was a possibility, partially because I got friends that live there, not so much because of. I mean, I do kind of like the idea of Austin because it's kind of a blueberry in there, so it's a little more.
Mm,
I feel like it's a little more centrist, which is where I lie,
yeah,
than kind of either a like fully blue state or a fully red state.
yeah.
And I've visited. I did really like Austin. I don't know why, but for some reason I've had West Virginia in my head for the longest time. Like just because I want to go. Like one of my goals is to buy a bunch of land and kind of have a compound, and grow my own food and stuff like that. Um, and that's, I mean, that's even more so now that I've had my health issues, and
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like you try so hard to eat healthy but the only way to really know where your food comes from and really know that all those poisons aren't in it is if you grow it yourself. It's
Yeah,
just
and I
like,
think even in terms of like fitness influencers and the people online, most of the conversation is shifted toward either just as much protein as you can
mm-hmm.
in a situation, or to limit like sauces. And it's like those are really the only two strategies.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, it's get it grilled instead of fried. Okay, get it without mayo. Okay, is that all you got?
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's been too simplistic for
Yeah.
so long, and that's what I'm learning in my nutrition classes is just
Mm,
like we kind of tailor it to each person because one person is like, well, nightshades are bad. Another person is nightshades are good or fine, and it's like it's the individual. If you're sensitive to nightshades, don't eat nightshades. If you're
yeah.
sensitive to oxalates, don't eat oxalates.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, I think it's like we've grown up in a, I don't know, broken sounds really extreme. Throwing broken on anything, any sort of system
hmm
sounds extreme, but like we've grown up in a, like the BMI and how fitness is talked about and what healthy really looks like
yeah,
was on a set standard for so long that not even that no one could genuinely really achieve. And so it's like it feels like we're starting to figure out that we can break some of that, but it
hmm
is still very, yeah, but it's still one lane
yeah,
unless you go into a specialized focus or get into your own nutritionalist or you make your own effort, then you can make it more tailored. But not everybody has that desire, or
yeah,
not even talking about means, but just like that sounds like a lot of work, and I'm just trying to make sure I have food on the table, make sure I have my rent's paid.
yeah. What's funny is I definitely see how that, and I probably thought that way for a long time, but the way we kind of do it is I want to give you. So I've got like a list of yes foods, maybe foods, no foods that I'll
Mm.
give you, and I want to put as many yes foods on there as possible. So like you,
Mm.
and the only no foods are the ones you're like allergic to,
Right.
like or have a sensitivity to, or will damage you. Um, and that like because I can see that like I've seen so many people fail just because they're on this rigid like
Mhm.
chicken and broccoli every day. Like that doesn't work because you get bored of it and you don't stick with it. But if I can give you as many foods as possible that like these are the foods you can eat, you can be like, "Oh, okay, that's not as restricting as I thought it was." And if you eat organic, grass-fed, all that kind of stuff, you can almost eat as much as I mean, like don't, you know, eat too much but you can almost eat as much as long as you're hungry and you'll be fine.
Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting. Gosh, I've learned so much and um, gotten so like even just buying toothpaste now is like, why do they put these ingredients in here? It's not needed.
Well, I have this conversation with people a lot. It's like I have developed pastor brain after going
Uh-huh.
to school for ministry and doing ministry for over a decade, and I can never turn it off. I'll watch a
Yeah,
movie and I'm pulling messages. I'm like, oh, that'd be a great analogy. Oh,
yeah,
this is a great conversation. I got to write this. I'm like, yeah, but I imagine in the same way as you are becoming more intentional and becoming more knowledgeable about nutrition and effects of things, it's one of those of like, even in the silliness of like your normal household items. I'm like, well,
yeah,
I can't turn it off, and so now I'm looking at everything in this critical view.
yeah. I think that'll die down a little bit eventually, but it's
Mm.
still so new to me that it's like I still have a little bit of that. If I eat a gram of sugar, I'm gonna die mentality.
Mm.
Like it's really hard to get rid of that when you go through such a traumatic experience, and
Yeah.
you're like you feel like anything you do, like even not. I didn't, I walked around the block and I washed the cars today, but I didn't actually work out. Like even that feels wrong to me now. It's just like I need to do something, but one day of rest isn't gonna, put me back in the hospital. So
Do you feel like because you went through such an extreme circumstance, you're kind of stuck living in that extreme mentality, at least for right now?
For right now, yeah.
Okay.
I think once I get a handle on it, like I'm super anal about my numbers, like my blood pressure and
Hmm.
stuff. But I am that way because I want to get to the point of freedom. Like, and I've already gotten, at least halfway there. Compared to where I was a year ago, where like I'm anal about checking my numbers every morning. Probably not something I should say on this podcast, but whatever. I said it. I check my numbers every morning and every night, so that way I know when something's wrong and I know when something's not wrong.
Mm.
Like I know what my averages are. I know where it should be. If it's a little bit elevated, then I'm fine. It's not a problem. It's like I'm dehydrated or this, that, or the other. So once you get to know your body and like you really know how your body responds to stuff and what those numbers mean, there's a lot more freedom in that to be like, okay, like I understand why this happened. Like whereas if you're just going to the doctor and they're like, oh, your blood pressure's high, now I can be like, yeah, I'm dehydrated. Yeah,
Hmm.
or like, yeah, it's a problem. Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So
Well, the power of knowledge, but not just knowledge, but wisdom.
yeah,
Right? Because
hmm
again, you could scare yourself to death by
right,
looking at numbers so consistently. But if you're like, I'm building this habit to improve my wisdom in the situation,
yeah,
so that I know and I can respond to a situation that is an outlier better,
right,
is a whole different mentality than just being like, I need to know, I need to know, I need to know.
yeah,
Because who knows the next time something, the extreme could happen.
yeah,
When again, 1 in a million, it sucks to be that 1 in a million,
yeah.
but
But at this point, I'm probably not that 1 in a million. Like if something extreme was going to
mm,
happen, it probably would have happened by now.
got it.
So that's not to say I can just throw caution to the wind, but
Right?
um, yeah, the other side of the coin too, though, is that I really want to get off the medications. So learning how my body responds to stuff and how to get my blood pressure down naturally is all part of the goal of like not having to stay on the beta blockers for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the blood thinners are the ones I really can't wait to get rid of because like I pricked my hand on a palm tree out back and it just like wouldn't stop bleeding.
Oh
Just like,
gosh.
gosh darn it. Just this tiny little, I mean, I wasn't bleeding profusely, but it's just this tiny little, pinprick and it just wouldn't stop. I'm
Right?
like, gosh dang
Right?
it.
100%.
Stop. So,
It's like your body's like, we've cut our hand open. What are you gonna do? I'm like, actually,
yeah.
if you're on the outside, we're fine. But
Yeah.
if you guys could calm down, that'd
Yeah,
be great.
right. Yeah. Just clot. Do what you're supposed to do.
Hey, do the thing.
Yeah.
Do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we were having. I do want to move on towards forgiveness because I
Yeah.
know you've got a story on that, but I do want to. And I'm only going to do this because I was going to do a TikTok video on it, but you and I just had this conversation, so I thought, well, let's throw it out there. But
Sure.
we were kind of talking about the whole Kirk Cameron thing and how he's kind of being soft canceled by the Christian community because of his new views on hell
Mm.
um, and just it's just a crazy like like the complaints that people within the church make about the dichotomy of left and right and the you know that everything's so separate and we do the same thing within the church.
Yeah.
So if anybody doesn't know, Kirk Cameron came out and said that he's leaning more towards annihilationism now. So you kind of had three choices on what hell is. Like it's either eternal conscious torment, which is what most evangelicals are taught, where you go to hell and you like burn there forever because you chose to not follow God. Annihilationism is basically hell is you just cease to exist. Like God just uncreates you and you cease to exist. So it's not eternal conscious torment.
It was, I think, explained to me once as like, if God is life, and you have chosen to exit the presence of God completely for all eternity,
Mm-hmm.
there is no life.
Yeah.
There is no existence. And I was like, you know what? I can see that connection
Yeah.
rather than it being like a God being like a Thanos snap, choosing to be like, and you're done. But like, this was always built into part of who I am.
Yeah.
And since you
Okay.
don't want anything to do with me, that is the consequence. And again, it's not a negative, how dare you, or yeah, get out of here. But it's like, this is what you wanted. I'm giving you what you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I hadn't heard that version of it, so I kind of like that. Um, so anyway, the third choice is universal redemption or universal what was it, salvation, where like the fires of hell are purifying and everybody ends up going to heaven. So, and there were some like early church fathers that believed that. I mean, there were quite a few. So people would be surprised. And so the point in bringing it up isn't so much like. Actually, the point is just to be more centrist on it. Be more, the fact that he came out and said this. Like I started kind of coming to this conclusion on my own, or through the Holy Spirit, a while before Kirk Cameron came out. And when he came out and said that, I was like, oh, somebody else believes this. Like especially someone that has been so outspoken as he is and everything. And but just watching the Christian community come out and be like, no, he's wrong. He needs to go back and read his Bible, and he is leading people astray. And this, like, there's other choices. Like you don't have to, like hold so fast to what you were taught. And I haven't come to like a final. Like here's what I was telling you is that I'm leaning mostly towards annihilationism right now, and I haven't been able to get to universal salvation, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope that universal salvation is the way. I hope that I get to heaven and everybody's there. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad it's instead of this whole idea that no, they need to be punished and they need to like burn in hell for all time. It's like, come on, guys. Like, let's be reasonable.
100%. I mean, it's one of those. It's like you said, like to hope you're right, and you hope you're wrong. That God is greater than what boxes we've created for Him,
Yeah.
right? I remember I had a conversation. Oh man, this is years ago. I was on a first date with a lady I had been talking to. This is just for context; it's not really relevant. Yeah, I date. No, no. We were having a conversation, and one of the biggest things that we connected on was that I had a younger sister with special needs, and that she had family members that had special needs. And so there was always that conversation for many people who have those individuals in your family about the idea of age. It's not age of consent because that's completely different. But it's like the age of
accountability.
Age of accountability. Thank you. I was like, I know it's another word, but anytime you say age of, it's like it's a weird. Like, but the age of accountability for individuals who do not have the capacity to make the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which again we get into. Oh, salvation is like a choice you make it once. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's already a theological landmine, minefield. But the idea, like, if you someone who is unable to, does not have the capacity, the ability to, and so I had always grown up with understanding of like, you know what, no matter what's going on in my sister's life, like when she passes and when she did, she is with God, and she is her body and all the issues that she's dealing with for her whole life are redeemed, and she gets to be in God's presence. And I remember one time there was this lady I was on a date. She goes, "It's like, what if you're wrong?" Not to be vindictive or mean, but just like, and when I went to school for this. I think about lots of stuff, and she was like, "What if you're wrong, and that's not how it works, and you get there, and that's not true." And I looked at her and I was like, "Well, I hope that's not the case, but I would say then I will need to stand outside the pearly gates and think about it."
Yeah.
Because ultimately, we should be holding all the things we understand about God. There's black and white things in the Bible, but there's so many things that we're still parsing out and figuring out through guidance through the Holy Spirit, through knowledge, and all the other parts of how we process in the world. And if you're holding on to things so tightly like this, and then let's say for whatever reason they don't go that way, then you get angry and it turns into you deserve, and it's like, or you go, this is what I believe, but if God shows me that it's not what I think and how I imagine the world that He designed and created,
which is a guarantee,
right? Guaranteed not to get it all right because we're not the ones who made it, right? But if you're like, God, like, help me, I'd love to understand as much as I'm able to in this lifetime, but help me just have an attitude of open-handedness to where if something doesn't go the way I think, or the way I hope, even, that I would still trust that Your way is better.
Right. yeah, every time I hear stuff like that, it reminds me of Vision in like when he first comes alive
Mhm.
in whatever Avengers movie that was, and
Age
they
of
say
Ultron.
like, whose side are you on? He's like, I'm on the side of life. Like
Mm.
I'm not on either of your sides. I'm on the side of life, and that's kind of how I feel like we should be. Like we should be on the
Mm.
side of life and like living in love, and not in the hippy dippy way, but like your first instinct should be love, and you should be winning people to Christ through love, not through like better arguments or that kind of thing. So
This is kind of relevant, but I want to ask if it's okay to bring it
yeah,
up
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
so
I was just as we were talking, I was like, "Hey, you remember those podcasts we did with Chris a while back?" Like it kind of reminded me of that.
well, I was gonna. So I mean, this is actually part of the good conversation because you're talking about the left and right.
Yeah.
I feel like you know that I typically am not a very political
Mm-hmm.
associated. I just registered to vote like this last year, which is a crazy thing to say. Is like turned 30. I'm 33 now and just now registered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's so funny because I missed the last vote for that whatever bill was like, oh, we got to prevent the Republicans from controlling. Da, 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 da. I
Mm-hmm.
missed it by like a week, so I'm like, well, and, people were like, oh, what do you think about this? I'm like, I think that I can't do anything about it. So, but the reason I bring that up is because with the whole Israel Gaza situation, again, I don't know that much. Like, I'm not knowledgeable about it, but what I have my general intuitions about situations. The reason I bring it up, a buddy of mine sent me Instagram reel from a church youth ministry. The caption was having the students pray for Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and the video was of them putting like a video of like the Israel flag like flopping in the wind, and like all the kids with their like like hands raised toward it, and I was like, the visual of this is atrocious. This
Yeah.
looks ridiculous. This is not good. It looks bad in every way possible. And so he was like, "What do you think about this?" And I normally, again, I'm not super strong. I'm not super firm when it comes to a lot of political stuff. And also, I'd been I would say, out of practice in the pastoral realm for a little while. But as soon as he sent it to me, I immediately was like, no, like, if I was going to pray over the situation, it would be, let's pray over this conflict.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's pray that God's will is done and that that it's resolved on the side of the least amount of death, casualty, the most humanizing. It should be a prayer for God, let this be resolved quickly in the way you want it to be so that the end result is bringing people closer to you.
Yeah.
And if that's not your prayer, I'm confused.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of that centralist mentality or being on the side of life,
Yeah.
being like, hey, being on the side of life does not mean the freedom to do whatever we want,
Right.
which is like you said, not the hippy dippy way, but the being on the side of life is what we believe God can do out of a situation for the betterment of all, even if we don't like all,
Yeah.
for the betterment of all. That is what we should be striving for.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you can hold, and this has been something that's come up a lot too in my feeds, is like you can hold two truths. Like I can want Palestine, I can want Gaza to be at peace. I can want the people to live fruitful lives and abundant lives, and also want Israel to stop getting attacked. Like it's not one or the other.
Right.
It's not like I can want Iran to be free. I can pray for Iran to be free, and whatever that ends up meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the whole rigid, like, if you're not with us, you're against us. Like,
Right.
only a Sith thinks that way.
Only a Sith thinks in absolutes.
Yeah, yeah, it's a, and that's not to say that I didn't used to be that. And I think we all kind of start out like that. We grow up in the communities that we grow up with, and
Yeah.
learn to think a certain way, and that's another one of those things I'll attribute to God. Like, careful what you pray for, because I prayed that He would give me wisdom and make me someone who can have an impact on the world. And I at the time that I prayed it, like I was pretty conservative, like I was on that side of the spectrum, and didn't expect to like move. And people watching this are going to start to worry and like, oh, we're praying for you that you see the light. And no, like, I'm not going nuts. I'm just more central. I'll ask questions before I'll give answers. You know, it's like the amount of thought experiments I do instead of like.
Mm.
It's very rare that you're going to ask me something. I'm going to give you a direct. This is what I think. Like there are a few things that I do have pretty well worked out as
Mhm.
far as what I think. But even then, like I'm open. You know, like if you can convince me otherwise, but you probably won't. Um, but then there's all that gray that you were talking about, where it's just like I'm gonna answer your question with a question. I'm gonna, have a discussion with you. I'm not gonna just be like, well, this is how it is, and you know, this is where I lean.
Yeah.
This is where I lean towards. But there are just so many of the things that we think are absolutes are not absolutes in this world. So
Yeah, and I was going back to people in the Christian world. I remember I had a conversation because somebody asked me about whether or not hell is real this week. I brought up the Love Wins by Rob Bell, and they were like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah." The best part is because they're even more removed from Christian culture than I am. I
mm-hmm.
have to be the one to educate them about like Rob Bell and the whole controversy and all that happened. And
Yeah,
I was just like, and as somebody who wasn't super invested, I'm like, "Yeah, there was this guy. He's a pastor. He did cool stuff, and then he said these things, and people didn't like that, and then it turned this whole thing." But I brought up the book because I was like, I remember I had a buddy at a church I was at. He was like, "Hey, I want to read this with you, and like I want to like talk about it." And I was like,
mm-hmm.
"All right, I don't know what voice I'm going to be other than I read the chapter too." But then I was reading it, and I'm just like, I would encourage people to read it as an exercise of critical thinking
Right.
rather than a choosing about wherever you land about hell. Because for me, it was like I love you talking about the first chapter because it's my favorite thing. Of hey, like in the first chapter, each chapter is he presents a principle or an idea
Mm-hmm.
about that eventually gets him to wherever he landed. And it's the first chapter is like, hey, the principle to start off is not everyone comes to God the same way. And I go,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean by that? Hey,
Yeah.
not every person you meet in the world will, see a church, go into a church, hear about God through a sermon, and give their life and get baptized in church. Some people will find it here this way, through a podcast. You gave a bunch of examples, and I was like, you know what? That's fair. I think that's a good note. Not everyone experiences life the same. Not everyone can be open to receiving who God is the same way. Absolutely. I think that's a great point. Okay, well, that means that Jesus isn't the only way. And I went, whoop,
Yeah. Hold on.
hold on. just because just because you're like this, I go from A to B. I'm like, you jump from A to G.
Yep.
If you had walked me there, I could see, but I was like, I don't agree with that second point, but I can agree with the first and go, you know what? It's okay for me to read something and agree with the part of it and
Yeah.
not agree with the end conclusion.
Right. Yeah. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Or what is it? My a pastor friend of mine always used to say, take the meat, leave the bones. Like
Yeah.
either way, I'm just like, that's an exercise of I can read something that I agree, disagree, or I'm unsure about, and process it, and then come to my own conclusion, taking into account the things that I've read and learned, and not having to make a decision in the moment that is a finite. This is where I'm going to be, and anything that comes my way that is different or might shake it or might give me another perspective is wrong. Maybe be less aggressive than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably need to reread that because when I first read it, I was still in my like really conservative phase and didn't like it. I mean, part of what I didn't like is I didn't like the way it was written. Like
Oh.
it was written like a Numa video, and I was just like, I don't really like the way this flows.
Which is so funny that you say that. I'm like, well, because we used to watch new videos when I was in
Yeah.
high school, and I was like, oh, that's probably why I was able to understand it the way I did.
Yeah.
I was able to approach it the way I did because at least when Chris was my youth leader, we would watch the Numa
Yeah.
videos. But
And that's the thing is the Numa videos were great. I just didn't
Oh.
like reading a Numa video.
well, it's one of the even how you use the
Yeah.
medium, right? We would, hey, we're gonna talk about this subject. Here's this video about this guy who's trying to seem super cool. All right, cool, great. What do you guys think about it? What do you like? What do you
Yeah.
not like?
Mm-hmm.
Even just those two questions and using that to spark conversation with a bunch of teenagers is the beginning of critical thinking skills that you can then apply, hopefully continue to apply as you continue to grow as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I'm kind of having the same experience right now where I found this podcast called Spirit Outspoken. It's these two girls that are kind of exploring, they're basically in the middle of their deconstruction and I always tell people I went through deconstruction too, but my goal of deconstruction was reconstructing, more correctly, or
Hmm.
having a better mind. Um, but they talk about, like, so the first one I listened to was on astrology, and I was like, oh, that
Hmm.
sounds interesting, and how, like, you can't deny there were astrologers in the Bible. The Magi were probably astrologers. They
Right?
they kind of, and I actually heard this cool. I don't know. Probably shouldn't say this because I don't want to get into it, but I did hear a theory that the Magi may have descended from the astrologers that Daniel taught. And
Oh,
that's who they were, and they,
that's interesting.
that's how they knew the kind of, um, the what's the word I'm looking for? Not the theory, but the story about the coming Messiah kind of thing.
Well, it's also one of those of like if you take the story at face value, the Magi are very strange people because they're very
Yeah,
firm about things that they shouldn't know
yeah,
or shouldn't know as well
right,
as they do. Why are you foreign dignitaries from another nation that we've never connected with or they don't seem to have a relationship with King Herod up until that point? Show up. Hey, we know when, where,
mm-hmm,
and what we're looking for.
yeah,
Because they never, because again, the Bible is written by the people who,
yeah,
they don't
mm-hmm.
have, so it's like, we don't know that part of the story. So I think a theory like that is very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was interesting too that exact thing that you're saying. It was because they descended from Daniel when Daniel was in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so back to the podcast, like, I'm having that experience a little too, where I'm like, oh, this is interesting, and then it starts out interesting, and then it hits a point where you're like, I'm not gonna throw this all out, but I'm not sure about that one. It's
Well,
like,
I mean, nothing will ever make me think about critical thinking as much as remember when we tried a YouTube before with Chris.
yes, I wasn't gonna say this.
Oh yeah,
I don't want people to find those
oh, I mean,
videos.
he took them down. They're not. You can't. I'm gonna say you can find them because someone could,
Yeah.
but like they're not publicly available. Like I don't know whatever he did, but like somebody was. I told them that years ago. Through
Uh-huh.
it, they tried to find. They couldn't find anything.
Okay.
So I
Cool.
was like, all right. But there was that lady that we had watched and came across during all that, whose title her YouTube channel was called God is Gray. I don't know what she's up to now. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
really staying on top of her story. But again, I remember even just seeing that name, and I was like, I want to engage with that because of where I'm at in my journey and
Yeah.
understanding of like when you grow up with such a black and white view of who God is, and even just the inkling of an idea that it may not be quite that rigid is good.
Yeah.
Now, not to speak to everything that you said or this, but I was like, the concept is good, and I think that was interesting. But thinking of theory and really interesting parts of the Bible that you may not want to get into, but I think is very fun. I was having a conversation with somebody, and was just like, it's like that witches exist, right? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, theoretically, if you believe the Bible is true, and
Mm-hmm.
everything in the Bible is real, what do you do with the Witch of Endor?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I was like, so to some degree, I believe as a theoretical person that ghosts and witches
Mm-hmm.
and all these things exist. In the practical skepticism of who I am as an individual, if when something happens, I'm like, I don't know, but I have to be like, if this is if I believe this, I theoretically, I think that's possible, and
Yeah.
I live with that. But that doesn't mean when Ghost Hunters comes on TV, I go, that's true
Yeah.
because ghosts are true.
Right.
It's that jump from one conclusion to the other. That's
Right.
like it doesn't have to be that. We can just have something can be true. That this is what is said, and this is a story that is shared. And then also, I'm not 100% sure that every situation that this thing comes up has to be 100% true.
Right. Well, I think it comes down to, like, having the lack of arrogance to think that we have this universe figured out.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people think that, oh, this is the way it is, and it's here in this book, and anything outside of this book just doesn't. But there's a lot of science coming out about how time exists and how quantum mechanics and all that stuff. Where it's just like, that's interesting. Like, it's not. I'm not gonna be like, well, that's not what the Bible says. So, do we really fully can we fully understand God and how He created the universe? And the way it works and everything. I don't think so. You know, like I think we can understand some of it.
Yeah, and I think like I'll use the example because I had known people who worked at Reasons to Believe, which is one of those organizations that like intentionally is trying to understand and connect science and the biblical story. And I'm like, that's great that somebody had the passion and is pursuing and wants to pursue that. Me, that's not my bent, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And if someone comes to me and is like, hey, I want to talk about this, I'm like, hey, that's so awesome that you have that desire. Unfortunately, you're not going to get very far in a conversation with me. Let me point you in this direction of this organization where you will find more fruitfulness in your conversation with that versus somebody who's like,
No, Ross has an amazing mind. It's just been the church that Lennon and I met at, he was one of the pastors there when I was growing up. So yeah, so I knew him for a long time.
Name drop, all right.
Yeah, a little bit. But at the time, like he was just Pastor Hugh. You know, like he was kind of like Reasons to Believe existed, but I don't know how long it existed when I knew him. So you know, he would be there Sunday mornings teaching. I think he was a pastor. Yeah. I think he was one of the staff pastors, but he would teach a Sunday school class around kind of the idea of Reasons to Believe every Sunday, and then some Sundays he would be up at the pulpit. So, yeah, those were some good times, man. We really had access to a great mind at that time.
100%.
So, yeah, I don't know, just this whole rigidness is really, you know, like I say, like I can listen to that podcast and be like, oh, that's interesting, and then. But it comes down to, like, it really comes down to discernment. Like, if you have zero discernment and you're just blowing with the wind, I would say never listen to something like that, because you're just going to blow whatever direction they take you. But if you have the discernment to be like, oh, yeah, I can see how that would work, but then, well, no, that's, I don't think so.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing. Then I find those things kind of interesting, so.
I have the perspective of using it as an exercise.
Yeah.
Rather than this is how I get my information.
Right. Yep.
Right. That's a world of difference.
Yeah.
In how you engage with stuff.
100%.
I was gonna do I was about to take over the podcast. Like, speaking of rigidness, you know, forgiveness. I was like, no, don't. Transition as rough as possible. Just
I gave up on transitions a long time ago. I just like, oh, so that thing about forgiveness.
Well, it's one of those things, like you said, like that as that pastorally brain is, you'll be like, oh yeah, you know, sometimes we're rigid about forgiveness and what that means. I'm like, that's not my job.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, don't do that.
No, I wouldn't have cared if you did, but it's funny. I'm still trying to kind of find the direction that this podcast is going, because I kind of want it to be conversational Joe Rogan style, but I also want it to have a direction. So I'm kind of trying to meld those two worlds and just be like, hey, this is the direction we're going. But in the meantime, if something comes up and we start having a good conversation, which it always is with you, like, I mean, honestly, I'm enjoying this, man. Like, I forgot how much I enjoyed doing those things with you. And the only reason I didn't want people to see those old ones is there were a couple times where it got a little personal, where, like, instead of just critiquing the argument, I won't say who, but it wasn't you or me, would start getting personal. You're like, oh, that shirt's ugly, or this, that. I was just like, hey, like, I thought we were critiquing arguments, not.
Well, it's actually really funny that you bring that up, because me and that other individual, 2 out of 3 aren't here. I wonder who it is. No, but we had a conversation about that of like, well, yeah, our inspiration for YouTube was content creators and comedians doing all that respond content and making jokes. That's where our inspiration came from. We were like, oh, this is really fun and looks like a lot of fun to do. We should try that. But from a Christian perspective, I was like, well, we didn't quite hone how that was going to work, because do I think those two things can exist? Well, absolutely. Did I think that we did that well? Sometimes. There was a few moments where I was like, hey, this is a really good meld of, we can joke and play around, but then also say something meaningful and actually add to the conversation. But that was like, 20% of the time, and the rest of the time was being silly. But I think I remember somebody was like, you can't do it. I'm like, look, again, we're coming from this perspective.
Yeah.
joke, haha, funny, enjoy time perspective.
Yeah.
If we were coming from like it seems like you're coming more for here as being very. I mean, not. I wouldn't. I was gonna say rigid. No, not rigid, but like an intentional exploration
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to engage and process. Yeah, those are two very different ideas and approaches and perspectives,
Yeah.
even in the same space.
Yeah. I think my goal is to kind of help people through what I went through, and let people know that deconstruction is okay as long as there's a purpose for it.
Yeah.
You know, like if it's just if your whole deconstruction is I'm pissed off at the church and that's the end of it, like okay, like why are you talking about it? Just go live your life, But I want to have the conversation, like I want to have the conversation of like, okay, maybe we got this wrong. How could we have done this better? What what do we know now that we didn't know then? I mean, even just me personally, ever since turning probably 40, the amount of stuff that I've been exposed to and the amount of and I'm constantly doing thought experiments, just like, oh, what about this or what about that, or you can get lost in it, but I try not to. I try to kind of just use it as an exercise and not as defining my life. But at first, I think that's hard because you're being exposed to new things. You're like, I didn't even know this. Like the other two options on hell. Like I only knew one option for hell growing up. Like nobody ever exposed me to the fact that there were other theories behind it. So
100%.
when you see that, you kind of you slam into a wall for a second. You're like, wait a second, like, did I have this right or did I have this not right?
Well, I think the funny thing for me around the whole conversation of deconstruction when it really started, like when it became really big, I was like laughing at it, not because I thought it was dumb or whatever. But I'm like, you guys are late. But then again, I think you had said it before when we were talking before the podcast of just like how you mentioned it here, like how blessed you were to have the upbringing that you did and how that allowed you to kind of not get stuck in certain things.
Yeah.
For me, my experience when it came to Christianity, the church, and then even just Bible school, it was a lot of like, I mean, I had a professor who was like, I will not give you my answer to this question. You can ask me, you can, in the conversation, he literally in class, he'd be like, hey, what do you think about this? He goes, well, what do you think about it?
Yeah.
He's like, my job isn't to make a bunch of me's.
Right.
My job is to facilitate a conversation and have you come to your conclusions. Now, after we had finished the class, somebody was like, oh, will you answer my question now? What do you think on this particular subject? And he goes, okay, here's what I think.
Yeah.
Does that change about how you process? And he's like, well, no. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt that process for you by saying this is what I think is right.
Right.
And I think for me, it was like people are like, oh, I'm deconstructing because of this, and I grew up with showing this, and I was like, oh, I learned about the 4 or 5 different ways to interpret this passage years ago.
Yeah.
I got
Right.
it's one of those of like taking my I know that I and many times have taken my education and the specifics of how that education came about for granted a lot, because I went to APU starting 2010, and even people that I went to school with actively were like, yeah, my classes aren't like that. I'm being told this and that, and I was just like, your professors aren't just letting you guys have conversations about stuff.
Yeah.
Your professors aren't going like, well, why do you believe that? Your professors aren't trying to get you to think more. And I felt bad because I was like, man, I really lucked out with the people that I got, because that has helped me be more of, I'll use your word, centralist, because it has allowed me to, I can intentionally choose, even in a situation where I might be on one side or the other, I can choose to let me stand in the middle to help the conversation get to a place of healthy discussion and processing. Even in that, I find that I've not changed my mind on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I still engage with the process. And if
Right.
you genuinely engage, you can still come to the same conclusion at the other side.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's a personality type in a sense too. Like there are those of us that love that conversation, and there are people that hate that conversation because they just want to. And it's not always a bad thing per se. It's just they find safety in certainty.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't. Like I can talk about just about anything, and like I said, there's a lot of things you're not going to convince me otherwise. But there's some things that maybe I can see, or at the very least, I can see why you think that way, and I'm not going to judge you for it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that's a valid argument.
And I think there's also places for when you should choose the safety of certainty versus the melting pot. I remember I would do this example with when I was preaching, was like you come across a passage and there are multiple ways to interpret it. Now, do you want to go to a church and hear a sermon for 2 hours about 4 or 5 different ways to interpret a passage? No, that would be exhausting. And it's also not what you're there for.
Right.
But I can be like, hey, like there are multiple ways to interpret it, but this is how I focus on this passage, and this is the lesson we can learn from this particular vein of looking at it.
Yeah.
Choose the certainty for the place where certainty can be the most helpful, but then also be like, I would love to have more of a conversation about it with you after in the lobby if you want to talk about it more.
Right.
Oh, you mentioned there were more than one ways to interpret it. What are they? Let's talk over here.
Yep.
And because that person has shown, ooh, I want to play with the gray.
Yeah.
Let's go do that.
Yeah.
But everybody else who didn't is like black and white, great. That helped me, gives me a thing that that is certain and has some structure for me to take into my week and process that way, because that's what works for me. Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's the way we should be having conversations. How long have we been going, Liam?
Oh, wow.
Okay. Wow.
That did not feel like 46 minutes.
No, not and again, like that's how it's always felt talking with you when we're doing this kind of thing. Or even I don't know if we ever even really did a podcast quite like this, but we used to have conversations in the garage all the time that were just like this. Man, I miss that. We'll have to do this more often.
For sure.
So just for the sake of having direction,
please.
'cause
Let's sidestep
my awesome transitions. Yeah, I don't believe in transitions anymore. I've tried them and I'm just like it never feels natural. So let's just move on to the next thing. So we are doing a series on forgiveness, and this is originally why I kind of asked you to come over, forgetting just how great our conversations are otherwise. But I know you've got kind of a story of forgiveness and how it's impacted your life and had some reconciliation go on. So I'll just open it up to you, man. Like, what's your story? This whole series is just to get people to think about forgiveness in a different way and kind of practice it.
I think if I was going to use a thought or idea to frame it, it would be that forgiveness doesn't have to look like doesn't have to be clean.
Mm-hmm.
And also, forgiving somebody doesn't mean that you just pretend like nothing ever happened.
Right.
And forgiveness also doesn't mean that that person is now allowed and given permission to have a deeper relationship if you don't want it.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is more for us as individuals, for our health, for our mental, emotional, even spiritual health, and how we're able to walk better, more free, to use the words that are important, more freedom in the world than about the relations. Forgiveness and reconciliation are two things that are dancing around each other but are not intertwined always. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. For me, mine has been more a reconciliation, but it was also like a relationship that was like restored and like, wow, it looks so different. And then now it's settled into like more of a normal, not as deep as it was once. And I'm like, that's okay. That's just how life worked out. So, and it was funny because when you text me, you're like, hey, we're doing this series on forgiveness. Do you have a forgiveness story? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe this. And you're like, that's actually pretty good. That's actually a good one. And I was like, all right, fair enough. But then I've always been it's just like, that's just normal for me, or this is what happened, and that's just what it is. Easy to kind of just be dismissive of my own stuff, but that's neither here nor there. In my life, my biggest space of forgiveness has been with my dad. And it was actually funny, I brought it up to a buddy of mine. He's like, well, yeah, you never really talked about your dad. When I was former student that I've become friends with now. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, when you did ministry, I don't think you ever talked about your dad. You've talked about your mom, your relationship there. And I was like, there's a reason.
Yeah.
There is, in fact, a very good reason. When I was very young, my dad was abusive physically to both me and my mom. It seemed like he got that out of his system before my little brother came along, so he didn't have that same kind of experience, except for the big ones when it was like, I remember there were times there was definitely a night I remember us sleeping in a shelter on cots because we couldn't be home because things were that bad, or multiple times the cops would come to the house to have to separate fights and things being thrown. And I grew up being told because my collarbone was broken when I was really young, but it was too young for me to know. It was like, oh yeah, you've had whenever those trivia questions with friends or at school, who's broken a bone? I remember going home, but like, have I ever broken? Oh yeah, you broke your collarbone when you were young because you Superman dived off the couch and you cracked it. And I was like, oh, that's cool, I guess, kids being kids. It wasn't until I was in junior high and high school that my mom pulled me aside and said, no, like the reason that your collarbone was broken was your father threw you from the couch, and we just didn't feel like you could handle that information. Then I'm like, yeah, I was a kid. That's fair. I understand. I did that with a few other places, which I also wasn't the biggest fan of. But parents and family, they make their choices, right?
Yeah.
But so I grew up with, like, going to visits, the typical almost movie like, mom drives you to a parking lot, your dad pulls up, get in the car and drive and hang out with him at his apartment. And I remember when I used to think that was so cool in the concept of it, but my dad, we were not close at all. I mean, when we were together for like weekends, it was very much like we buy us things or we'd hang out, go to the park and play games. And there was like, it felt nice, but then there was a darker side of it. Like me and my brother got into got an argument over a video game, and I called him a very unsavory name. And then my dad burst into the room and then shaved my head as a punishment because I used to have an afro that I used to really, that was like one of my things where I like to have my hair just grow. He shaved my head and he shaved it bad. Like he purposely scratched up my head with the guard. Like he was angry at how that went down and then sent me home like that. And then that turned into an argument between my mother and him. And then there was all that. And then I had to go to school like that because my mom didn't think to fix that. And so I went to school and I got pulled aside by teachers. They're like, hey, what's going on? One, you had an afro 3 days ago and you don't. And then two, your head, you don't look good. It's like, what happened to you? And then that was a whole conversation. So I grew up with that. But also, as a kid, I just genuinely didn't think my dad cared for me.
Yeah.
We would go to do drop-offs or shifts up, and it was one of those things where I could tell that he cared about my sister with her disabilities, and he was always very nice to her and things like that. And he seemed to interact better with my brother, but I always kind of felt like I was like the extra. Felt like I was unwanted in so many ways. And I remember really internalizing that of just feeling like, I see him, he's around, and then it was one of those of like when I got to make the choice whether or not I went to those weekends, I stopped like immediately.
Yeah. Because
it was just that overwhelming undercurrent of feeling unwanted. That was really, really, I didn't even understand I couldn't even have put words to that when I was a kid. It was just like, something doesn't feel right. And it feels like he doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Like that kind of sucks. It hurts. I remember in high school, I think it was a junior or senior in high school, for my birthday, my gift to him, which is a weird thing to do on your birthday, was I wrote a letter basically just like forgiving him for all those feelings. And because I finally worked on myself a bit and felt like I could forgive and be like, I can let go of these emotions and that connection. And so I wrote a big letter. It was like, I think it was 3 or 4 pages long. I gave it to him. I think I watched him glance over it and then like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And it could have hurt me again.
Right.
But I was like, that wasn't for you. That was for me.
Yeah. And
the fact that I was even able to write it down and get it out was so cathartic, and it made me feel safer, and it actually helped our relationship go from like I don't want you around because you make me feel less or unwanted, to just like, we could just be, Dad who's over there, hey, do you need money for school? Hey, do you want to get McDonald's as like a visit? Sure. We can do that. We can be that civil, whatever kind of relationship that is. And that's how life went, probably from high school all the way till even through college. I mean, he wasn't the person I would call if something was going wrong or if I needed anything. It was, he would check in, do normal parents do as you get older and you get that adult age. College, you're not fully an adult in college, but like once you are out of the house kind of a thing. Hey, how you doing? Doing okay? Yeah, I'm doing all right. Need anything? No, I'm okay. Very, very distant, very simple. And it went on like that for years. And then I had Gotten married, which is a fun thing. A lot of people don't know that about me, which is
Yeah.
fine because we've been divorced for 6 years now, and so it's one of those things where I'm meeting new people in my life past that stage, and unless it comes up in conversation, it's not your business.
Yeah.
But when it does come up, I go, yeah, this happened. They're like, really? What happened? Oh, this. Okay, and it just moves on. Now
Yeah.
it's just a part of the story. It's not anything heavy like it used to be. But when that happened, me and my ex-wife, we were going through our marital troubles. We intentionally made a choice not to involve our families in it
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't want to complicate it and feel like there was pressures. And I was like, and in that moment, I agreed with her. All the consequences I had to deal with after were not fun.
Yeah.
Dealing with family members who were like, "Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you do it? We could have helped out." I had my uncle crying to me in the foyer of my mom's apartment, basically saying like, how could you do that to her? He had no idea of any context of anything that happened.
Yeah.
And I was just getting the business.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you, whatever, I'll take it. I'll be the bad guy. Sure, whatever. The only person in my family who had a genuine conversation with me, listened to me, was my dad.
Hmm.
When I was even just, after it had just happened, I was trying to process and understand, because me and my ex-wife, we had split, and then that's when we first told family, and then we ended up getting back together, and then split again, and that was where we fully got divorced. During that first split, we're like, hey, like, we can tell whoever, we talk about, that's when I talked to my dad about it, because I needed a place to stay. He let me stay at his place in Long Beach, which was a very fun drive.
Mm-hmm.
But let me sleep on his couch for weeks at a time, without any, like, you need to do this. It was just like, hey, are you okay? No, whatever, you're good. Me and him would just walk around
Yeah.
Long Beach, walk around Glendora, walk around places and just talk. And he's like, well, what are you feeling about all this right now? How are you feeling? What are you processing? Where are your thoughts at? Why did you make this decision? What were the reasons behind this? And I was just like, man, it feels good to have someone actually want to talk,
Yeah.
want to understand. I mean, again, grew up from divorced parents, so he had been through his own process and was able to come from a place of like, I've been there. So you're not alone.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that with my mom, which was not fun. But again, somebody who I'd always kept at arm's length or even further if I could, suddenly was like the only person that I felt safe bringing in close.
Yeah.
And that was huge. Me and my dad went from being just basically strangers to like actual family
Mm-hmm.
and actually someone that I could talk to and call. And there were multiple times in the midst of everything that was going on that I did call him like, hey, like, I kind of just need someone to talk to. Okay, well, let's meet up and go grab dinner and just go for a walk and talk. And that was, I mean, invaluable now.
Yeah.
Not even, because our relationship now is more of just, check in every other month, every 3 months or so. How are you doing? Kind of very simple. But we had that a period in time where we were able to come and basically just be father and son
Yeah.
for basically the first time in my life. And that felt really good in terms of I felt safe trusting him in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And also felt like, let's bring God into it. It did feel like it felt like a ordained, chosen, designed moment in space. And it was good because it kind of made me remember that in a time of crisis, if there's not anybody else I can connect with, maybe I can connect with him again.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually did happen again when my sister passed this last year, where a lot of people on my mother's side of my family, because I've got the pastoral degree, there are a lot of times where people will still expect me. I don't get to mourn. I don't get to be the one to process the emotions. I don't get to be like, it's I have to be the one to be the safe place for others. And even the one that got me was I had a family member who checked in, hey, how are you doing? And I was just, still kind of processing in shock. I haven't had all the big emotions yet, but I'm still, and they're like, well, this is what I'm doing. And I'm like, I don't care what you're doing. Not to be rude, but I'm like, that's what in my head. And out loud, I was like, oh, thanks. But in my head, I'm like, I said I'm processing. That was not an invitation for you to tell me
Yeah.
what to do or where the end goal should be. Hopefully, if someone's like, "Hey, I'm trying to figure things out. I'm processing." Hey, listen.
Yeah.
And I think it's also one of those. Am. I have a tendency. People have told me this before. I use. I'm a bad litmus test because I will use myself as an example. Because if someone came to me and said that someone had died and they were thinking about it, I would try to be, hey, how can I be there for you? Hey, how
Yeah.
can I? And I would hope to get that also.
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone is me.
Right.
Not everyone thinks like me. There are multiple people that I reached out to with like a, hey, and then I got a response. I was like, well, no, you're not a safe space.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything bad that they did. Well, one or two were pretty bad. But it was like, they wasn't intentionally trying to hurt me. But the result was, I don't feel like I can trust you. And me and my dad reconnected quite a bit during that, where it was like a lot of people on my family who are Christian were very much like, oh my gosh, now she's in heaven, all this. There was a lot more relief
Mm-hmm.
and more positive, which again, not bad. I wouldn't say that is a bad thing. But I haven't quite gotten there yet.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be around that if you're still in the sad, dark place.
Yep.
And he was somebody who was like, I think he literally mailed me a book. It was one of those that made me laugh when I got it. He said, hey, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Is there anything you're doing, helping you staying involved with your church? You're going to therapy? He was asking all these questions. Nobody else was asking these questions.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, and then he mailed me a book of, I've seen a few of them before, but it's like all of God's promises.
Mm-hmm.
Those little tiny books.
Yeah.
And he wrote on the card, he was like, hey, this is something that has helped me as I'm processing about your sister. I miss her a lot too.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if if 13, 12-year-old me, if you told that kid,
Yeah.
this is going to be the guy that's going to be there for you in two of the darkest moments of your life, I would have been like, sure.
Yeah.
You don't know. You don't know him. You don't know our relationship. But it's been that place where I have been able to, it's one of those things where people talk about like earning trust, especially in this generation
Mm-hmm.
in this time. People have to earn the trust, have to earn the right to be close. I'm like, and I'm like in the middle of that. I'm like, yeah, to a degree, but also, don't be distrustful of every single person in the world, because what is life going to be like if you're always on edge, always on the defense? But it's one of those, like, in those two big spaces, he earned the right to be this close.
Yeah.
And when eventually in the future, hopefully, God willing, knock on particle board or whatever word services are around, who are the people that I want to introduce a future spouse to or future potential spouse to? My dad is now on that list.
Yeah.
He hadn't been on that list for 20-something odd years of my life, and is now in one of I would say in the top 2 or 3
Yeah.
now.
That's amazing.
Because, and it was one of those things of, the relatability was I think the key to opening the door, but just his growth as a person in the years of his life, which I only know a little bit about, but not too much. His growth, his spiritual journey, where he's gone, his trajectory of how he's been changed as a man through his life, his continued adult life. That was all God working in his life, and things that I would never have known, never thought to ask about. And that intersection of where his growth was and where I needed a place to feel safe collided.
Yeah.
And was able to create a space for me to be okay, or to be okay not being okay, in a time when so many other voices were trying to give their opinions, so many voices are trying to say this is what you should do. The one person who goes, how do you feel? What are you thinking? What do you think you should do? And then even when I was like, well, I'm thinking about this, and then being able to offer, I was like, well, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
Have you thought about this consequence? And not as a trying to steer or shoot you away, but like, think about it.
Yeah.
It's so easy, especially in extreme situations, and especially in the midst of it, right? In the midst of that divorce, in the midst of my sister passing, everything felt extreme, and everything felt like it needed to be figured out now.
Yeah.
Someone who tells you to slow down in a loving way.
Yeah.
Tells you to slow down by taking your hand and sitting down with you
Yeah.
can make all the difference.
Yeah. That's such an amazing story because it's one of those cool stories where the help came from the last place you expected it to.
100%.
Yeah. That's really cool. I'm glad you told that. That's a man. Again, just so much to unpack. There's so many things that
Let me add this. This is not sick, just had a little phlegm.
yeah, that's going to
Sorry.
be good on the podcast.
Yeah. Why does this one moment, the spike? I'll say this in terms of the relationship aspect. As my family, like what is it? The nuclear family, mom, dad, brother, sister. As we have gone further and further along the journey, I have become more and more ostracized by still having a relationship with my dad.
Oh, really?
From what went from when I was a kid was my dad was the outsider, and it was us, me, myself, my brother, my mom, and my sister all together. As we grew, I kind of drifted away from my family as much because I was starting to kind of see their own toxicity and those things that weren't the best. You know, kind of, I've always been very much like, I'm doing my own thing. If you're in my vision while I'm doing my thing, I will remember you. If you're not, when I have a moment to remove the blinders, then I will remember you, kind of a person. Not the best, but it's something I can work on. Now, it feels like me and my dad are over here, and then my mother and my brother are in a whole different area, and I'm also on the outside to the point where there are times when my dad has helped me or let me do something, or like I gave him something or whatever, and I will just say, oh yeah, I was hanging out with a friend. Because when I've brought up my dad in conversation, just normal conversation.
Yeah.
Not even intense stuff, just, the mood shifts.
Gosh, that's crazy.
And I'm just like, look, man, we're all Christians here. Look, I understand you guys and whatever you and my dad went through and your relationship with your father, for my brother. It's like, I'm not going to speak into those things, but don't make me feel weird if mine is different. Don't try to make me an enemy of an enemy just because I have a different experience. And it's one of those, it's unfortunate to see how those dynamics have shifted. And I think there are probably other people who have had stories of like, when you forgive some person, people on the outside, on the peripheral, may see you differently.
Right.
May respond in a very different way than you do. Whether it's saying, oh, you should do this, trying to give you advice, or even just like, I can't believe you would ever. And it's like, look, that's fine. That's your forgiveness journey. That's where you're at. But where I'm at, this is where I believe I'm supposed to be in this journey of forgiveness. Wrong or right, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I would appreciate it if you didn't try and impose what you think should be done in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's too bad when they do, because they don't know what they're missing out on. You know, imagine if everybody was as forgiving. You know, what kind of relationships could be brought around and reconciled there.
Right.
Yeah.
Reconciliation doesn't have to mean, if my mother and dad, let's say they were to reconcile a relationship, does that mean they have to get remarried for a third time?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
It means whatever their relationship looks like, they may not even ever talk to each other again, but it's not out of an animosity. It could just be because things don't work out.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Life doesn't align.
Yeah.
But I think there's that pressure, especially when it comes to forgiveness, I would say even in the church, where it's like, oh, when you forgive somebody, that means that. I'm like, no, not always.
Yeah.
Forgiving my abusive dad from childhood doesn't mean that I'm going to hang out with him every weekend.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that stuff all still happened.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't just take it away. Yeah, I think that's where the church kind of has an annihilationist viewpoint, is like, you forgive and suddenly all that just disappears, and like, oh, that's not really how trauma works. I hate to break it to you guys, but
I think my favorite is people, I've heard it done, and I always respond the same way, because I'm a bit of a jerk sometimes. Oh yeah, I'm 100%. They're like, we're supposed to be like Christ-like, and Christ is him, and God forgives us. Those things are from, as far as east is from the west. That's how far I remove them, and they are no longer attached to you. But yeah, Christ-like. I'm not quite there yet.
yeah.
In my journey, I'm working on forgiveness and all those things and grudges and all that. I'm still a human being, guys. I'm Christ-like. I might not be quite as close to Christ-likeness as you are, and I apologize.
Yeah. Or if we want to like sit here and analyze it,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how close are you?
We get real technical.
Yeah, it's
Right.
crazy.
I think in the we they said they're talking about having structure and certainty, right?
Mm-hmm.
People like forgiveness looks like this,
Yeah,
and now I have chosen the standard, and now when you forgive, meet this standard.
Yep.
Easy, bye. Cookie cutter. Do you fit the cookie cutter? No. Well, then you're doing something wrong.
yeah,
Or, or maybe we don't have that mentality. Maybe we step away from the shapes. Somewhat.
yeah. Well, 100% because we take away the journey, and the journey is part of the joy of it. I mean, you really can't get from A to B without the journey.
Yep.
I think a lot of Christians like to think you can. Like, I was this way and now I'm that way. You know, the whole road to Damascus thing, but most of our journey is road to Emmaus. Like, it's a journey. Takes some time, and where, you know, if we were ever going to be as perfect as Christ, then what's the point? Like, then maybe we don't need him, but we strive to be that. We strive to be, you know, as Christ-like as we can, but we're not going to get it perfect because we're not him, like you say.
And I think I always think of like there are stories in the Bible of miraculous healing that happens immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's also healing that comes in adulthood, like the blind man.
Yeah.
Both are stories of healing, but they look very different.
Yeah.
Stories of redemption of nations that take hundreds of years.
Yep.
Versus stories of redemption of individuals that are able to happen over a single battle. Like it's, I mean, looking at David's story of how much his path, even when he was given the, hey, this is what's going to happen to you, that path was not clean. And then after that, and then when he gets to know about his children, even a dirtier, but he's still reckoned to him as as a man after God's own heart.
Mm-hmm.
Not as, man, David was so great. It's like, no, God's heart had the space for David, no matter how messed up his journey was. God's heart was still big enough to be open for him.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's a different focus. And and for me, it's definitely made me go, yeah, it's less. I forget. It was a buddy of mine who works at Fuller. It's like, yeah, he's like, if you look at the language, it's not about David's so great. He is an example of God's heart. It's like, no, it's the focus is God.
Yeah.
That moment or that verse, that saying is meant to lift up who God is and him including David, not the other way around.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that makes a huge difference in how you view God and how we interact and what that looks like.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, man, you I think you brought it to a close right there. That was a good spot to end on. So,
Sure.
I don't want to try to have the final word or anything because that was perfect. Thanks for coming out, man. I know it's a bit of a drive. I love you. I'm glad you were able to come out, and I hope we can do this again. If I
Sure.
could lug this whole studio out to you, I would, but it's a little difficult to do.
Definitely down to have conversation whether with mics or not.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I enjoy as much as you were saying that you appreciate Mike. I have always enjoyed conversations with you because you have that same mentality of like, this is a conversation.
Yeah.
Even as we were talking in the kitchen, it's just like, this is where I kind of land, and this is the reason I kind of land there. He's like, this is the book I'm reading, and this is the book I'm reading, and this I'm figuring. I'm like, I love that.
Yeah.
Because it is, and then even how you talk about it is opening for, if you've checked out that book or not, we can talk about it and we can play around with that rather than being like, this is what this thing, so now I got to force it. No. It's all in part of the conversation and all in the Rolodex of things that you are considering as you are coming to a conclusion. And the coming to the conclusion is going to take all the time.
Yeah.
It's not a set time that it's going to take. Some things you might, there are things that you're set on and you come to that conclusion and you're like, this is where I'm at. That's okay. And some other places are going to be, the rainbow wheel is still going to be going.
Yeah.
And that's all right.
And it's a lot less stressful that way. You know, like it can be stressful being so rigid that you just can't change anything. But if you if you're open a little bit. I don't know, but yeah, once again, I'll reiterate, like, this has been a breath of fresh air, man. Like, it's because it's hard to find people like us that are willing to have that conversation or willing to like actually think about things instead of, like, this is how it is and this is how it's always gonna be. Or worse, not even necessarily that's bad. It's more when, like, I'm just thinking, like, I'm just exploring, I'm just thinking. It's not that big of a deal, but
Yeah.
oh, but you better be careful. Even yes, come on.
Well,
like,
I think I'm okay with having a conversation for conversation's sake,
yeah,
and not everyone is.
yeah, no, 100%.
What's the end result of this? We hung out and talked.
We talked.
That was the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
The goal was to hang out and talk. We talked.
Yeah,
Well, did you change your mind? That was never my intention going in.
yeah.
Is that your intention going into every conversation? That sounds exhausting.
Totally is. Yeah, oh man, that's gotta be awful. Yeah, cool. Well, we'll definitely. In fact, I'm actually going to be starting a cooking show pretty soon. Maybe I'll have you on that one, and we can do some more conversation while we
For sure.
learn a little bit about nutrition.
I can't. Now that this is super off topic, but I think it's hilarious. You know how AI is doing? They're doing like a lot of AI summaries for things, for like shows or for. I would love for someone to like do like we have like one of our conversations doing cooking, and the AI summary is like having a conversation about like the most extreme. And then also snap peas are good for you. You're just like, what? What is this? What is this conversation?
If you remind me of that, I will absolutely do it for the description for
You
the
should.
video.
You should. You should.
That'll be
Love
fun.
those.
All right, well, we're going to end it there today, but once again, thanks, man. I appreciate you making the drive out here and
Appreciate the
being willing to
invitation.
do this, because it's been a lot of fun. Like, it really, truly, I know you know, but, like, I'm being genuine. I absolutely loved it, so
Loves to.
we'll catch you guys next time.
Peace.